So, a while back, a friend of mine had asked me to expound a little more on the topic of hagsploitation. I had briefly made a post about it, and that was so long ago. I am just now getting around to doing so. So, if this sounds like something that you'd be into, please strap in for a breakdown of some of my thoughts on the topic, as well as an analysis on how I believe that the 1997 film Eve's Bayou fits perfectly into this category. One of my favorite genres of film is hagsploitation. So it's a subgenre of horror or thriller where formerly young Hollywood starlets who have been usually typecast for roles as the ingenue or femme fatale are now playing characters who have descended into violence and madness in dilapidated or gothic settings. Another term for this category is psychobiddy, which I think is hilarious. I think that given the historical context of how the American movie industry treats women in general, that these films were either meant to be a consolation prize or a humiliation ritual for aging actresses who refused to be relegated to Hollywood's attic. Either way, an actress's transition to her hag era can be quite liberating. It can be a time where a woman can have the most fun in her career. I am a fan of these films because I have always been drawn towards the crones and the wicked old witches, the women whose power has increased with the passing of time as opposed to waning, as we are taught to believe is the natural order of things for a woman. The 1962 camp classic, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, is the quintessential example in the genre. It stars the silver screen titans Joan Crawford and Betty Davis as sisters living in the shadows of their vaudevillian days in a decaying Hollywood mansion. The gag being that these two had an off screen beef and were playing roles against their on screen typecast and real life personas. Their performances in this film are perfect examples of how to subvert all of Hollywood's expectations of you as an actress of a certain age. The 1963 film Dead Ringer, also starring Betty Davis, is another example of a good hagsploitation watch. Seriously, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane revived Betty Davis's career in a major way, and she's got some really wacky, campy movies towards the end of her career. And if you want to talk about that, we can really get into it. I am such a fan of hers. The appeal of hagsploitation for me goes so much farther than just the horrors of aging itself. And not to reduce that, because I know that aging can be horrific, but I feel like a lot of filmmakers just use it as a cheap gag or a way to code misogyny into their visuals. So my favorite entries are the ones that exaggerate the grotesque while simultaneously humanizing these characters. When an actress can imbue these monstrous acts with a sense of dignity, I am particularly sad. When I talk about hagsploitation films that I love, I put Eve's Bayou in this genre, and here is why. So, when I refer to the crone phase of a woman's life, I am referring to the neo pagan triple goddess deity, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And this movie to me is essentially about the different phases and archetypes that women embody. Eve's Bayou is a Southern Gothic about a Creole American family living in a well to do Louisiana neighborhood in the early 1960s. The father, Louis, is a much respected doctor within the community, but his unfaithful and lustful actions set forth a tragic chain of events in the lives of the Batiste family. When I was a young girl, the characters Cicely and Eve, played by Megan Good and Journey Smollett, resonated with me the most. But now, as an independent adult, this is totally Diane Carroll's film for me. Like, she absolutely sets the tone as the grande dame of this cast. Mind you, Diane Carroll had historically played glamorous, sophisticated roles, so seeing her as Elzora, a swamp witch in voodoo regalia, is a heavy departure from what audience members were used to getting from her. The genius of this casting was also in putting Diane Carroll alongside Lynn Whitfield, because what do people always say about her? That she may play evil, but she'll never play broke. Now, that was a standard Diane Carroll made conscious decisions in her acting career to stay faithful to. Diane paved the way for Lynn Whitfield to have the role that she has portrayed thus far in her career. Then there is the aspect of them looking like mirror images of one another. And this is evident in the scene where Elzora does a reading for Roz. Elzora looking like an older version of Roz. Elzora's skull-like face paint serves as a memento mori to the ladies of the Batiste family, a reminder that at one point Elzora's face was like theirs, unscarred by age. and that they too would all eventually die. But would they ever truly live? And if so, on whose terms? Superficially, it is easy to surmise that Elzora is just in opposition with the Batiste because her and Mademoiselle are both spiritual workers, so they're in competition with one another. But Elzora's crone wisdom causes her to have a different perspective on the way the Batiste family conducts their lives. See, the Batiste women are what we would now call male centered. They all put the father, Dr. Lewis, on a pedestal. Notice how I said women. I am not talking about the sisters Eve and Cicely. They are children. We can see why they have a hyperbolic esteem for their dad. The grown women, however, they don't have as good of an excuse for turning a blind eye to Lewis's wrongdoings. Her animosity was also fueled by Moselle's curse as a Black Widow. Like, girl, you know that every man who falls in love with you is doomed, and you simply refuse to stop falling in love. Like, at what point is this murder? And during the reading, Elzora advised Roz to wait and look to her children because not only would they give her clues on how to navigate her way out of depression, but they were being neglected in her preoccupation with her husband's infidelity. Like, poor little Poe. We barely know anything about him. Elzora isn't the ultimate villain in this movie, but she's okay with being demonized, and that's why this character is always teaching me something whenever I revisit this film. The Batiste looked down on Elzora with pity and contempt, not realizing that they would be lucky to wind up in her circumstances. Elzora was sovereign and unencumbered by the stress of motherhood and the disappointment of romance. No one told her what to do or dictated her emotions, and it is telling that that level of freedom for a woman is inherently horrific to some people. This is definitely going to at least be a two-parter because I have way too much to say on this topic. But please share with me your thoughts. Like, what are some of your favorite hagsploitation films? Who are some actresses that you would love to see in their hag bag? Please, let's get into it in the comments. Thank you for watching this episode of Celluloid Therapy. Peace.